Hollywood Reporter recently released their list of the top 50 best TV shows of the century. And the top 5 were all quite expected. They were Mad Men, The Sopranos, Succession, 30 Rock, and The Wire, which are all very acclaimed and culturally recognized shows. But at the number 6 spot was a more unlikely contender, FX's Reservation Dogs. This may come as a surprise to some, but Reservation Dogs has actually quietly been one of the more celebrated comedy shows of the last few years. But until recently, it stayed completely shut out of the Emmys conversation. In this video, I'm going to talk all about the marvelous show that is Reservation Dogs and how it finally broke the curse of being snubbed by the Emmys. I'm not going to get into spoilers per se, but I will talk about the generals of Reservation Dogs just because I do want to get into what makes it such a beautiful show. Reservation Dogs was created by Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi, and it ran for 3 seasons on FX. Reservation Dogs focuses on 4 indigenous teenagers and their group that they call the Res Dogs and their life on this reservation in Oklahoma. And it's all about just the things they get on to. We meet them stealing a truck of chips, and from there, it's all about the love they share, the community, the trouble they get into, the lessons they learn. And though the stage is set for a very low-key situational comedy, the show actually sets its ambitions very far. It blends lots of genres, including family drama, situational coming-of-age high school comedy, action heist, and so on. I want to first start by talking about the trailblazing representation in Reservation Dogs. The show addresses community, diversity within the reservation. It also touches on generational trauma coming from, Native Americans' tough relationship with white people and land. There's different ways of approaching that generational trauma and decolonization, including an influencer played by Amber Midthunder who comes to these kids and starts lecturing them about all the radical things they need to do to denounce the ways of their colonizers. But the series very much shows the pure joy in celebrating their heritage, whether it's the songs they sing or the food they share or the community and the stories that bring them together, and the way they see death as a stepping forward, or the way they look at their past generations and their departed loved ones through spirits. I want to first touch on how this show looks at 3 different generations. Obviously the teenagers, who are the Res Dogs, their parents, and then the elders of the community as well. Let's talk about the Res Dogs themselves. Elora Danan is named after the character from Willow, and she's actually the most independent of the group. She was raised by her grandmother and never really knew her parents well. Her mom died when she was really young, and her dad was never around even before she was born. We also have Bear, who lives with his single mother Rita, who was good friends with Elora's mom, and his dad is a really shitty absentee rapper who never really makes an effort. There's also Willie Jack, who's the late Daniel's cousin, and she's very close with her family and her parents. And there's Cheese, who's a hilarious guy who stumbles upon an old woman who mistakes him for his grandma, and they kind of take each other in. So that's who's in his life. The elder characters are very much still looking for new adventures. They're not just sitting around talking about their regrets or whatever. They're very much engaging in their community, engaging with the youth and the young people. The teenagers are always looking out for them, listening to their stories and their wisdom, and it's very lovely to watch. Especially from the perspective of someone like me, who has always been close with my grandparents. It's very touching to see those dynamics, even when it's not just with grandparents and it's just with the elders that you're close with in your community. Particularly Gary Farmer as Uncle Brownie. There's a scene where he and Wes Studi are together and they start singing Free Fallin'. Like, all these funny stuff that they get onto is really charming to watch, but we also get to learn about their dynamics, the regrets that they have, the apologies that they want to make to each other. And we even see one episode that's just about what they were up to when they were teenagers. Bear also has a spirit elder who died in battle generations ago, and he's kind of there to just give him advice and keep him from being lonely. And this guy is genuinely one of my favorite characters. And the other generation the show touches on is Bear and Elora's mothers and their close friend group. Bear's mother, Rita, is shown as probably the strongest person in the entire show. She's obviously always going through a lot, being a single mother and working at a clinic, but the show very much shows her as the champion in not only Bear's life, but throughout the entire cast, and all her screen time with Bear, who's played by Defero Wunatai. Since they're both people who are very much in touch with their emotions and are very loving towards each other, that mother-son dynamic is really, really sweet. The next big thing I want to talk about is how the show addresses grief. Elora has this grief hanging over her entire life because of the death of her mother when she was 3, but also the recent death of her friend Daniel. And touching on the death of a teenager is something that's incredibly heavy, and the show always does it with empathy and sometimes never holds back, but it never feels forced. The second season especially deals with them trying to honor Daniel's memory the best they can and coming together and reckoning with this unimaginable reality that he's not around anymore. And I have a very personal connection to that. Just a couple months before I started this show, I had lost someone in my family who was just about the res dog's age. Just the unfathomable thought that that person is no longer around and that their light is still with us, even if they don't know it or if we can interact with them. It genuinely made me burst into tears at the end of season 2, and a show has not done that to me in a long time. On another note, like I said, Elora's mom is no longer around, but she very much interacts with the people who remember her and loved her and keep her alive for Elora, which is really lovely. There's even an episode, a phenomenal episode in season 3 that Devery Jacobs herself directed, and it's about Rita's consultations with her visions of Elora's mom's spirit. And again, it was just a really lovely portrayal of how our loved ones can still carry on with us and how we can still carry on their dreams and spirits even when they're gone. Most importantly, the show sticks the landing so wonderfully. Lily Gladstone is in it for a little bit, and she is so great even if she's only in 2 episodes. And at the end, there's another Oscar-nominated A-list actor that I don't even want to spoil, but the conversations he has with Devery Jacobs, who I believe also co-wrote that episode that he's in, don't look it up. It's such a great surprise, and he is so phenomenal. So I can gladly say that Reservation Dogs is great all the way till the end. And like I said, it's only 3 seasons, and the first season's 8 episodes, 2 and 3 are 10. The shortest episode is 22 minutes, and the longest episode is 38. So it's a really easy watch. Reservation Dogs had a very interesting run with the Emmys because for a really long time, they just refused to nominate it. The show started its awards run quietly but promisingly. It got a Golden Globe nomination for Best Comedy Series, and this is the first but also last time that the Golden Globes recognized it. And it also got a Critics' Choice nomination the same year. The Critics' Choice Awards were the biggest leaders in recognizing and nominating Reservation Dogs. Devery Jacobs was nominated across all 3 seasons for Best Actress for playing Elora. Critics' Choice Awards also nominated Defero Wunatai and Paulina Alexis for playing Bear and Willie Jack respectively for the later seasons. The American Film Institute also listed Reservation Dogs as one of its top 10 TV series for 2021, 2022, and 2023. And keep in mind, the AFI doesn't separate this list for drama, comedy, and miniseries. It's one list for the 10 best shows of the year. Reservation Dogs constantly got in, so the Emmys have decided to reward all the love for the first 2 seasons by giving it 0 nominations. And I don't know exactly why. Going into this year's Emmy nominations, I was really preparing for the worst because, like I said, The Hollywood Reporter placed it at its number 6 best show of the century. New York Times called it a coming of all ages masterpiece. Vulture called it peak TV. So critics, journalists have all been championing it, but I didn't know if the Television Academy would want to seek it out ever. But I was really crossing my fingers for it to get nominated, and lo and behold, when I heard Defero Wunatai's name get announced under Best Actor in a Comedy Series, I was so happy.
Defero Wunatai, Reservation Dogs.
Now, unfortunately, Devery Jacobs did not get a nomination like I was hoping, but they did embrace their final chance to award the show with an outstanding comedy series nomination. I think that this being the final season really did impact its popularity and its ultimate love at the Emmy nominations, even though I would have loved to see a couple more, even under the supporting categories and directing and writing. I am glad that this is still a win for the show, because despite all that love from journalists, like I was saying, this was still an underdog show with the awards. Indigenous stories have always been the underdog, and this year's nominations were trailblazing for that. Lily Gladstone was nominated for Under the Bridge, and Kali Reyes was nominated for True Detective, making them the first Indigenous performers this year to be nominated. I do think that we've seen it often that a very beloved show that has been shut out of awards love often gets a boost when the final season comes out, especially with comedies. I mean, we saw it happen with Schitt's Creek, and I think that's ultimately what happened with Reservation Dogs. Here's what Roxana Hadidi of Vulture had to say. There's the sense of, okay, this thing is over, it's a complete story, now I will dive in. I could see that some people, having pushed the series off and not being that interested, are now using its conclusion as an opportunity to dive in. I definitely am in line with this mindset, which is that I use the conclusion of it and the celebration of that final season to enter the world of Reservation Dogs and enjoy all 3 seasons. And now that the show is being embraced and celebrated by the Television Academy at the Emmys, I hope you guys use that as a gateway to enter the world of Reservation Dogs as well. So definitely check it out. Let me know what you think of the show if you've watched it, and if not, check it out on FX, Hulu, Disney Plus. Come back and let me know what you think.